The fall of the princess. On the distant planet of Varnes, a world once filled with lush forests and bustling cities now stood in chaos. War had ravaged the planet for years, and its people were on the brink of collapse. At the heart of this kingdom was Princess Kira, the beloved heir to the throne. Her people had once looked to her for hope, for leadership, and for salvation. But that all changed the day she was betrayed. Kira had spent her entire life preparing to lead. She was strong, intelligent, and determined. But in a world where politics was often more dangerous than war itself, not even the most powerful could avoid the consequences of betrayal. Her closest allies, the generals, the nobles, and even some of her family, had turned on her. They saw the kingdom's future differently and had grown tired of waiting for her to rise to power. They plotted in secret, and one fateful night they struck. It was the middle of the night when Kira's world came crashing down. Her palace, once a symbol of hope and prosperity, was now under siege. Her guards, the very people she trusted, were overwhelmed by a sudden and brutal coup. Kira tried to fight back, but there were too many of them. Her strength, once unmatched, was no use against the numbers that surrounded her. The betrayal had been swift. Her loyal soldiers fell one by one, and soon she was captured. As she was dragged from her royal chambers, she saw the faces of those who had once sworn loyalty to her. Now they stood with cold eyes, looking down on her as if she were nothing more than a pawn in their game. They didn't hesitate. They shackled her wrists, dragged her through the halls of her palace, and out into the dark night. The cold air of the outside world hit her face, but it did nothing to numb the pain she felt. Her heart was breaking, not from the physical wounds, but from the realization that those she had trusted most had betrayed her. They had abandoned her in the most unimaginable way. Her captors didn't speak much as they forced her onto a transport ship. The journey felt endless. The stars above the planet blurred together as the ship ascended into space, and Kira could do nothing but look out the window. She felt a deep sense of loss, not just for her throne, but for the very people she had sworn to protect. Had they all really turned against her? Had all her efforts been in vain? When the ship finally landed, Kira was dragged from it and thrown into the dirt. The ground was cold beneath her, but that was what took her breath away. No, it was the sight of the barren land surrounding her. This wasn't a place for royalty. It wasn't even a place for anyone who mattered. It was a desolate, forgotten moon, far away from everything she had ever known. Her shackles were heavy, biting into her skin. She struggled to stand, but her strength was fading. Her body was battered from the journey, and her mind was clouded with confusion. Why had they brought her here? What was the purpose of this cruelty? One of her captors, a man who once served as one of her closest advisors, approached her with a cruel grin. "You're nothing now, Kira," he spat, his voice full of venom. "You were once a queen in your mind, but you're nothing but a tool now, a broken princess. You have no kingdom, no power, and no one left to save you." His words stung, but they didn't break her. Kira had been through too much to let someone like him control her. She was strong, too strong to be brought down by words alone. But the truth was undeniable. She was alone. Alone on a deserted moon with no allies, no resources, and no way to escape. They left her there, alone, abandoned, and forgotten. The ship's engines roared as they lifted off, disappearing into the stars, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. Hours passed and the cold set in. Kira had no idea how long she'd been lying there, her body trembling in the harsh winds. The night was unforgiving and she could feel her strength draining. She closed her eyes, but every time she tried to sleep, the nightmares of betrayal and loss overwhelmed her. The faces of those who had turned on her danced in her mind, her family, her friends. She had failed them all. But she wasn't ready to die, not yet. She forced herself to stand, her legs weak beneath her. The chains around her wrists were a constant reminder of her fate, but they didn't define her. Kira still had a chance to survive. She refused to let this be the end. She had fought her entire life for this moment, the moment where she could reclaim her kingdom, where she could fight for the future of her people. Suddenly, a noise interrupted her thoughts. It was faint at first, barely audible above the wind, but it grew louder. Her heart raced as she realized someone or something was approaching. Could it be her captors coming back to finish what they had started, or could it be someone else, someone who had come to check on her or to help her? She strained her eyes, searching the horizon. The dim light of the distant stars barely illuminated the landscape, but she could make out a figure in the distance, a lone figure walking toward her through the storm. Her heart skipped a beat. She was weak, her mind clouded by exhaustion, but there was a flicker of hope. She had been abandoned, left to die, but someone was coming. Would this stranger be her savior, or her next tormentor? Kira could only wait and watch. hoping that this was her chance to escape this nightmare. The stranger's approach. The storm howled in the distance, its fierce winds cutting through the barren landscape like a living thing. Princess Kira struggled to maintain her balance as the chains around her wrists rattled with every weak step she took. Her body was bruised and her mind was clouded by exhaustion. The once proud princess, who had commanded armies and ruled over a thriving kingdom, now felt like a shadow of herself. She was nothing more than a captive, abandoned in the cold. Yet through the haze of despair, something stirred within her, a flicker of hope. The figure she had seen in the distance was growing closer, the sound of footsteps crunching against the dry earth growing louder. Kira's breath quickened, and she squinted her eyes, trying to make out the shape of the person approaching. The wind made it difficult to see clearly, but there was something about the stranger that seemed familiar. Her pulse quickened. Was it a rescuer? Could someone still care enough to help her? She swallowed hard, her throat dry as dust. She tried to call out, but the words caught in her throat. "Help me." It was a simple plea, but in her weakened state, it felt impossible to voice. Would anyone even hear her, or was this just another cruel illusion that her mind had conjured to keep her from sinking into despair? Then, as the figure drew nearer, she could see it more clearly. The person was tall and seemed to move with purpose. A man. His silhouette was defined against the stormy backdrop, and his stride was steady, almost as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Kira's heart thudded in her chest. Her eyes flicked to the ground, her chains dragging behind her, and then back to the approaching figure. She had no idea who he was or if he could even be trusted, but something about him felt different. He wasn't an alien invader or one of the soldiers who had turned against her. He didn't have the menacing presence of her captors. No, this man, he seemed human. The stranger finally reached her, and Kira looked up into his eyes that were kind yet filled with something more. They were eyes that had seen too much. Eyes of someone who had lived through unimaginable pain. "You're in no condition to walk," the man said softly, his voice rough but surprisingly gentle. He reached forward and helped her steady herself. His touch was firm but not harsh. There was no judgment in his hands, no mockery in his gaze. Kira couldn't help herself. She leaned against him for support, too weak to stand on her own. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice a rasp. The man hesitated for a moment before replying. "My name is Eli. I'm not sure why I'm here." He let out a quiet sigh. "I was just passing through, but something about you, something about this place made me stop." Kira's heart fluttered. He wasn't supposed to be here. The moon they were on was forgotten by the galaxy. No one came here unless they were exiled, abandoned, or lost. And yet this human, a stranger, had found her. I don't even know who you are or why you've come for me, but thank you," she whispered. The words felt foreign on her tongue. She hadn't felt real gratitude in so long, not since before the betrayal. Eli shifted uneasily. "I don't know why I stopped either, but I think we're both in the same kind of trouble." His gaze drifted toward the horizon where dark shapes flickered against the storm's edge. The unmistakable shape of a patrol ship could be seen just barely in the distance, its lights flashing as it searched for her. Kira's heart dropped. The storm was not just a barrier for her, it was a cover for her enemies. "We need to move," Eli said urgently, snapping Kira out of her thoughts. He quickly cut the chains around her wrists with a small blade, his hands working with quick efficiency. Kira barely felt the pain from the sharp pull of the chains breaking free. All she could focus on now was the fact that she was free to run. Kira stood shakily, her legs weak beneath her. "They'll be looking for me. They won't let me go." Eli's eyes hardened as he scanned the landscape. He was no stranger to danger. "Then we'll make sure they don't catch us. Come with me." Without another word, Eli began leading her through the darkened terrain. The wind howled, but they moved swiftly, keeping low to the ground. Kira followed his lead, struggling to keep up. She wasn't strong enough yet. Her body was still recovering from the shock, but she pushed herself, each step burning like fire. They reached a narrow ridge that overlooked a canyon. From the top, Kira could see the patrol ships circling overhead, their searchlights cutting through the dark. They were closer now, too close. But Eli wasn't afraid. He seemed to know exactly where he was going. "We need to get to the old base," he said. "It's not far, but we'll have to be quick. They've already seen us. We don't have much time." Kira nodded, not fully understanding what the old base was, but trusting Eli in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. He had saved her. He was her chance to survive. As they began their descent down the canyon, Kira realized that she no longer felt completely alone. There was something about Eli, a sense of strength and resilience that made her believe that, maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. She wasn't just some forgotten princess anymore. She was a survivor. But the question remained, who was this man and why had he risked everything to help her? The hidden base. The wind howled fiercely as Kira and Eli descended into the narrow canyon, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust. The storm had begun to shift, intensifying as though the planet itself sensed the tension building between the two humans. The alien patrol ships circled overhead, their searchlights scanning the canyon, casting long, eerie shadows on the rocky walls. Kira's heart pounded in her chest, her breath shallow and rapid, but she forced herself to keep moving. Eli led the way, his figure a steady silhouette in the dark, as he navigated the jagged landscape with ease. Kira, still weak from the brutal ordeal, stumbled but refused to slow down. Every step felt like a victory. She had been abandoned, left to rot, but now there was someone with her. "Stay close," Eli murmured without looking back. His voice was low but urgent. "We're almost there." Kira nodded, grateful for his presence. He had been her savior, pulling her from the edge of death. But even as they moved through the winding canyon, a question lingered in the back of her mind. Who was Eli? Why had he come for her? Why was he risking his life to help a stranger, a fallen princess who had nothing left? But there was no time to ask, not now. The canyon walls began to narrow, and the air grew cooler as they descended deeper. A dim light flickered ahead, drawing Kira's attention. Was it a fire? A light source? Her mind raced, the thought of shelter and safety almost too much to bear. They reached a cliffside, and Eli stopped. He motioned for Kira to crouch low. They were only a few meters from the source of the light, but there was no sign of life. Only an old, weathered building nestled against the rock face. The structure was hidden from the patrols above, as if it had been forgotten by time. "This is it," Eli whispered, "the old base." Kira stared at the building. It looked ancient, its once-proud walls crumbling and covered in moss as though nature had slowly swallowed it whole. The entrance was a large metal door, rusted and half open. It didn't look like much. Yet Kira could feel something in the air, a sense of secrecy, of safety. "Is it still functional?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Eli didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for her to follow him as he slipped through the door. The air inside was cooler than outside, and the faint hum of old machinery echoed from the depths of the building. It looked abandoned, but something about the place felt strangely alive, as if the walls themselves had witnessed countless stories of survival, of people who had come here seeking refuge, just as she had. As they entered, Eli led Kira down a narrow corridor, his steps sure and purposeful. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, and Kira couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This was no ordinary base. This was a place that had been hidden for a reason, its purpose buried beneath years of silence and neglect. They came to a small room with a dim light flickering overhead. It was filled with old crates and equipment, most of which seemed to be gathering dust. In the center of the room was a large, old-fashioned computer terminal, its screen crackling to life as Eli approached it. "I didn't expect this base to still be operational," Eli muttered as he sat down at the terminal. His fingers danced across the keys with ease, bringing the screen to life. "It's not much, but it'll get us out of here." Kira watched him, her mind racing. Get us out of here? She had no idea what Eli's true intentions were, but she had learned not to question his actions just yet. He had brought her here. He had saved her life. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward her escape from the nightmare she had been trapped in. Eli tapped a few more keys, then paused. His expression hardened, his eyes narrowing. "There's a problem," he said, his voice filled with quiet urgency. "What is it?" Kira asked, stepping closer. "I don't think this base is as abandoned as I thought," Eli replied, his voice tinged with worry. "There's a signal coming from inside the building, a distress signal. Someone's trying to reach us." Kira's heart skipped a beat. A distress signal. Before she could respond, the terminal beeped and the screen flickered again. A strange symbol appeared, one Kira had never seen before. It was a series of lines and shapes, almost like a code, but she couldn't make sense of it. "Who would send a signal from here?" Kira asked, her curiosity piqued. Eli frowned, his gaze fixed on the screen. "I don't know, but it's coming from deeper within the base. We need to check it out." Kira's heart raced. The storm outside was bad enough, but now there was another unknown to contend with. Who else could be hiding here, and what kind of danger awaited them deeper inside the base? Eli stood, motioning for Kira to follow him. We don't have much time. If we're going to survive, we need to figure out what's going on here. Kira followed him without hesitation. Her mind was filled with questions, but one thing was clear: this wasn't over. She had just escaped one danger, only to stumble upon another. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just walked into something much bigger than herself. The darkness of the hallway seemed to stretch out before them, each step echoing in the silence. As they moved deeper into the base, Kira felt a chill run down her spine. What was waiting for them in the depths of this forgotten place? And most importantly, who was sending the signal? The echoes of the past. Kira's breath caught in her throat as she followed Eli deeper into the base. The walls seemed to close in around them, the corridor twisting and turning in ways that felt unnatural. The faint hum of forgotten machinery buzzed in the air, but the deeper they went, the quieter it became. There was an eerie stillness, as if the base itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. As they approached a set of heavy doors, Eli's hand hovered over a control panel, his fingers moving cautiously across the buttons. The screen above the door flickered to life, displaying strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly glow. "What is this place?" Kira whispered, her voice tinged with awe. She had never seen technology like this before. It felt ancient, almost alien. Eli didn't answer immediately. His eyes were focused on the glowing symbols. "It's not just an old base. This is something much older, something lost." Kira frowned, lost. The doors suddenly slid open with a low, mechanical groan, revealing a vast, dimly lit chamber beyond. Inside was a large, circular room, its walls covered in intricate carvings. At the center of the room stood a massive metallic structure, its surface gleaming despite its age. It looked like something out of a long-forgotten legend, an artifact, perhaps, or a relic of an ancient civilization. "What is this?" Kira asked, her voice barely a whisper as she stepped forward, her gaze drawn to the structure. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, far more advanced than anything her people had ever built. It radiated a strange energy, almost like it was alive. Eli's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he approached the structure. "I don't know, but I have a feeling it's connected to the signal we're receiving." As Kira moved closer, her fingers brushed against the cold surface of the structure. Suddenly, a surge of energy rippled through the room, causing the walls to glow with an eerie light. Kira stumbled back in shock, but Eli steadied her. "What was that?" she gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's reacting to you," Eli said, his voice low and tense. "This place, it's connected to your people, the princess, the heir. You were meant to find it." Kira stared at him, her mind racing. Meant to find it? What was he talking about? Eli seemed to realize what he had just said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to alarm you. I don't fully understand it either, but this base, it was built long before your kingdom, before your people even arrived here. It's connected to something much older, something beyond." Kira's pulse quickened as the truth of his words sank in. This base, this structure, it wasn't just a shelter. It was something that had been waiting for her, something that had been buried for centuries, hidden away. But why? Before she could ask another question, the screen in the center of the room blinked to life, casting a pale light over the chamber. A voice crackled from the speakers, soft, distorted, as though it was struggling to reach them through the passage of time. "Help me." Kira froze, a voice. It was faint, barely audible, but there was no mistaking the desperation in the words. The voice seemed to be coming from the heart of the metallic structure. Eli's eyes widened. It's still working after all these years. Kira could feel a chill creeping up her spine. The voice, it sounded human, but who was it, and why was it asking for help? Without another word, Eli moved toward the center of the room, his fingers brushing the ancient symbols etched into the walls. As his touch made contact, the entire structure began to hum, a deep, resonant vibration filling the room. The voice from the speakers grew clearer, more distinct, until the words became unmistakable. "I am the last of the Guardians, please." Kira's heart skipped a beat. The last of the Guardians. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling as she stepped forward, unable to tear her eyes away from the glowing symbols. The voice paused for a moment, as if considering how to answer. Finally, it spoke again, its tone filled with both sadness and resolve. "We were the protectors, the first ones to settle this world, but we failed. We failed to keep the peace. Now the darkness is coming and you, Princess Kira, are the last hope. Kira felt a shiver run through her. The words echoed in her mind, but they made no sense. She was just a princess, abandoned and betrayed by her own people. How could she possibly be the last hope? The voice continued, its tone growing weaker. The key is within you. You must awaken it before it's too late. The darkness is already here. Before Kira could ask more, the voice faded, leaving behind a haunting silence. The hum of the structure ceased, and the room seemed to fall still once more. Eli turned to Kira, his expression grim. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kira nodded, still processing the message. The last hope, the key, what was the voice talking about? "I heard it," she replied, her voice shaky. "But what does it mean?" Eli stared at the ancient structure with a mix of awe and fear. "I don't know, but it sounds like you were meant to be here, Kira. This place, this power, it's calling to you. You're not just the princess of a fallen kingdom. You're connected to something much larger, something that could change the fate of this world." Kira's mind raced, her thoughts spinning. She had come to this forgotten base thinking it would be her refuge. Now she was tangled in something far more dangerous, something ancient and mysterious. "Eli," Kira said, her voice suddenly resolute. "We need to figure out what this means. We need to understand who these guardians are and why they left this for me. If there's any chance to stop whatever darkness is coming, we have to find it." Eli nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "I'll help you, Kira. Together we'll uncover the truth, but we need to be careful. This power, whatever it is, could be more dangerous than you realize." Kira looked at the ancient structure once more. She had no idea what she had stumbled upon, but she knew one thing for sure: her journey had just begun. Awakening the power. The silence in the chamber was suffocating. Kira stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the now dormant structure, still absorbing the cryptic message that had echoed in her ears. The weight of the voice's final words pressed down on her chest, a lingering feeling of urgency and dread. "The key is within you." Eli, still standing near the terminal, watched her with a mixture of concern and fascination. He had always known that this place was important, but he hadn't expected it to be connected to her, Princess Kira, the once mighty ruler of a fallen kingdom. He hadn't expected her to be at the center of it all. "What do you think it means?" Kira's voice was quiet, but filled with a new determination. The fear that had plagued her for so long was now replaced by a strange, unexplainable force, a pull deep inside her, as though her entire being was awakening to something beyond her comprehension. Eli stepped closer, his boots echoing on the cold metal floor. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly unsettled by the magnitude of the moment. "I think whatever the Guardians left behind here, it's not just a message. It's a weapon, something that could either save or destroy this world." Kira glanced around the room, feeling as though the walls were closing in on her, their ancient carvings seeming to pulse with a strange energy. She had been just an ordinary princess, loved by her people until the betrayal, until the day she was abandoned. And now here she was, standing in the middle of an alien base, called upon by a long-forgotten race, the Guardians, to unlock a power that could change the fate of this planet. "How do I unlock it?" she asked, her voice almost too soft to hear. She felt small, almost powerless in comparison to what she was supposed to be, but deep inside her there was a strange sense of connection to the base, a bond she couldn't explain. Eli met her gaze. "I don't know, but I have a feeling it's connected to you, your blood, your lineage. You must have been born to awaken this power. Maybe there's something in your past that can help us understand it." Kira shook her head, frustration bubbling up within her. "I don't understand. I'm just the princess. I was never trained for something like this. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through the room, cutting off her words. The metal walls trembled, the lights flickered, and the floor beneath her feet seemed to hum with life. Kira's eyes widened in shock. What was happening? Eli quickly stepped forward, grabbing her arm to steady her. "It's reacting again. This power, it's waking up because of you. It's calling you." Kira could feel it then, a deep, resonant vibration emanating from her chest, as if the very core of her being was being drawn toward the center of the room. Her heart raced. The key, it was within her. Without thinking, she stepped forward, her hand outstretched, reaching for the pulsating symbols that danced along the walls. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, the room erupted in a flash of light. The light was blinding. The ground beneath Kira's feet seemed to shift, the air growing thick with power. Kira gasped as a flood of memories, strange alien memories, began to flood her mind. Images of towering cities, battles fought across the stars, and beings of unimaginable power. Faces she didn't recognize, yet felt oddly familiar, flashed before her eyes. Kira stumbled back, overwhelmed. "What's happening to me?" Eli gripped her shoulders, his voice urgent. "You're unlocking it, the power, the memories of the Guardians, they're embedded in you. You're more than just a princess, you're the heir to their legacy." Kira's mind reeled. The images and memories were so vivid, so real. It felt as if the Guardians, whoever they were, had once walked alongside her, guiding her, protecting her people. The power they had left behind was hers to wield, but at what cost? Another flash of light. This time, the energy inside her surged outward, and a low hum filled the room, vibrating through her entire body. She could feel the pulse of it deep in her bones. "I can feel it," Kira whispered, her voice trembling. "It's alive, the power, it's alive." Eli stepped back, his face etched with concern. "It's too much for you right now. You need to control it, Kira. We need to find a way to tap into it without losing yourself." Kira closed her eyes, focusing on the energy flowing within her. She could sense its raw, untamed strength, like an ancient force thrumming through the air. It was overwhelming, but there was something else, a sense of connection, a thread that tied her to this place, to the Guardians, to everything. With a deep breath, Kira tried to focus, to calm the storm of power inside her. Slowly, the energy began to stabilize, the flashes of alien memories receding into the background. She felt herself gain control over the force, just enough to stop the overwhelming surge of light and power. When she opened her eyes again, the room had returned to normal. The energy was still there, but now it felt more contained, more manageable. "I did it," she whispered, her voice shaking. I have control." Eli exhaled, looking at her with a mixture of awe and fear. "You do, but this is just the beginning. The power you've unlocked isn't just a tool, it's a responsibility. You're not just the heir to the Guardian's legacy. You're the only one who can stop what's coming. The darkness they warned you about, it's real, and it's already here." Kira's heart skipped a beat. The darkness. She remembered the warning in the voice. The darkness is already here. "Where do we go from here?" Kira asked, her voice steady now, filled with newfound resolve. The fear she had once felt seemed distant, replaced by a burning desire to understand, to fight. Eli turned toward the door, his expression resolute. "We find out who is behind the darkness, we track them down, and we make sure they don't get their hands on the power you just unlocked. It's the only way to save this world." Kira nodded, her mind made up. The path ahead would not be easy, but it was her path to take. As they exited the chamber, the hum of the bass echoing behind them, Kira couldn't shake the feeling that her life had changed forever. She had been given a gift and a curse, but in the face of an unknown enemy, she would rise. The world was waiting for her to awaken, and she would not fail. The shadows of the forgotten. Kira's footsteps echoed softly as she walked through the base, Eli by her side. The weight of what had just happened lingered in the air, each step heavy with the realization that her life had taken a turn she hadn't been prepared for. The memories, the power, the strange connection to the Guardians, they were all too much to process in one moment. But she couldn't afford to dwell on her confusion. The darkness the Guardians had spoken of was out there, and she, of all people, was now the one meant to stop it. "Eli," Kira said, breaking the silence, her voice firm but tinged with doubt. "What kind of enemy are we facing? I don't even know where to begin." Eli turned to look at her, his face somber. "The Guardians didn't say much, but I've been studying the old records from the base. There's a name that keeps coming up in the old archives, a name that has been linked to the chaos that plagued this world long before it fell into ruin." Kira raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "What name?" Eli hesitated, as though unsure whether to speak the words aloud. Finally, he spoke, the name slipping from his lips like a curse. "The Voidwalkers." A chill ran through Kira at the sound of the name. "Voidwalkers?" she echoed, the word foreign to her ears. "What are they?" "They're an ancient order born from the same time as the Guardians. But unlike them, the Voidwalkers didn't seek peace or harmony. They were driven by something far darker, a hunger for absolute control, power, and knowledge. They wanted to manipulate and harness the very fabric of the universe itself." Kira frowned, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "So, they were like conquerors." "Worse," Eli replied grimly. The Voidwalkers didn't just conquer worlds, they sought to destroy and rebuild them in their own twisted image. They were banished, sealed away after the Guardians and their allies managed to stop them, but something must have awakened them. And now the Guardians are gone, and we're the only ones who know of the threat they pose. Kira's heart raced as the pieces fell into place. The darkness wasn't just an abstract concept. It was real, and it had a name. The Voidwalkers were coming, and they were the true threat to everything she had ever known. "So what do we do?" Kira asked, her voice steady but her mind in turmoil. "How do we stop them?" Eli looked at her, his expression full of both hope and fear. "We need to find the key to their power. The Guardians left behind clues, something hidden in this base, but we don't have much time. If the Voidwalkers are already active, they'll be looking for the same thing." Kira felt her chest tighten as she looked around the base, feeling the weight of the responsibility that had been thrust upon her. The key to stopping the Voidwalkers. She was the only one who could find it, the only one who could stop them. But she didn't know where to begin. Before she could voice her concerns, a sudden rumble shook the base, sending a shockwave through the walls. The ground beneath her feet trembled. "What was that?" Kira gasped, her hand instinctively reaching out to steady herself. Eli grabbed her arm, pulling her towards the nearest door. "We need to move, now." The two of them sprinted down the hallway, the noise growing louder. The walls shook with an intensity that Kira had never felt before. As they turned a corner, they saw it, dark figures emerging from the shadows. Their bodies were cloaked in tattered black robes, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They moved silently, as if the very air around them bent to their will. Kira froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Who are they?" "They're the Voidwalkers," Eli said in a low, urgent whisper. "They've found us." The figures were closing in, their presence suffocating, as if they were part of the very shadows themselves. Kira could feel the darkness pressing in on her, like a cold hand wrapping around her heart. She wanted to run, to escape, but she knew there was nowhere to hide. One of the Voidwalkers stepped forward, its glowing eyes locking onto Kira's. The air between them seemed to crackle with dark energy. "You are the princess," the Voidwalker's voice echoed, distorted and hollow. "You are the key." Kira felt a chill run down her spine as the Voidwalker's gaze intensified. It knew who she was, knew her purpose. But how? "No," Eli shouted, stepping between Kira and the dark figure. "You'll never control her." The Voidwalker's laughter was low and hollow, sending a shiver through Kira's bones. "You have no power here, human. The princess is the only one who can awaken the true power." Kira's mind raced. Awaken the power, what did it mean? Without thinking, Kira reached out instinctively, her hand connecting with the ancient symbol on the wall beside her. She felt the surge of energy course through her once more, the familiar hum of power rushing through her veins. The Voidwalker's eyes widened in surprise. "No, it can't be." The ground shook violently as a blast of light shot from Kira's hand, pushing the Voidwalkers back. The force of it was immense, almost too much to control. The room seemed to explode with energy, but in the chaos, Kira could sense the danger. The darkness, the Voidwalkers, would not be so easily defeated. Eli grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "We need to get out of here. They're not alone. We've triggered something far worse." Kira barely heard him over the deafening noise of the Voidwalkers' retreating footsteps. The shockwave had given them a moment's reprieve, but it was only a matter of time before the darkness returned. "I'm not running anymore," Kira said, her voice steady, her eyes burning with newfound determination. "I'll stop them, whatever it takes." Eli nodded, a look of admiration in his eyes. "Then let's find the key together." With a final glance at the retreating shadows of the Voidwalkers, Kira knew her journey was far from over. The darkness had come for her, for the world, and she wouldn't stop until it was defeated. The key was within her, and with it, she would forge her destiny. The unseen enemy. Kira's heart hammered in her chest as she and Eli rushed down the twisting corridors of the base. The darkness that had attacked them was still lingering in the air, its oppressive weight refusing to lift. Her hand still tingled with the residual power from her outburst, the energy she had barely been able to control. "Did you see their eyes?" Kira's voice shook as she spoke, trying to steady her breathing. "They knew me. They knew exactly who I was." Eli glanced over his shoulder at her, his expression grim. "It's not just who you are, it's what you are. You're the key to everything, the power they want." The Guardians must have seen something in you when they created this base, something we still don't fully understand. They turned a corner, finding themselves in a wide, empty chamber with strange markings on the walls. The symbols were unlike anything Kira had seen before, but they almost seemed familiar, like a memory just out of reach. Kira placed her hand on the nearest wall, her fingers brushing over the cold surface of the symbols. She closed her eyes for a moment, and for the briefest second she felt a strange sensation, a connection, a pull. It was as if the walls themselves were calling to her. "What is it?" Eli asked, his voice low, his gaze filled with concern. I'm not sure," Kira admitted, stepping back from the wall. "But I think it's trying to tell me something. I can feel it." Eli frowned, watching her closely. "Whatever it is, Kira, we need to stay focused. The Voidwalkers are still out there. They're not going to stop until they get what they want." Kira nodded, but her thoughts were a swirl of confusion and dread. The darkness that the Voidwalkers represented, it wasn't just about the power they sought. It was something deeper, something far more insidious. Kira couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play than she could see, and time was running out. Before she could speak, the base trembled again, the walls vibrating beneath their feet. A low rumbling echoed through the chamber, this time far more intense. Something was coming, and it wasn't the Voidwalkers. "Get down!" Eli shouted, pushing Kira to the ground just as a series of explosions rocked the walls around them. The force was enough to send them sprawling, but Kira's quick reflexes kept her from hitting the ground too hard. She looked up, heart racing, just in time to see the chamber's far wall crumble away, revealing a dark figure in the doorway. It wasn't one of the Voidwalkers. The figure stepped forward, the light flickering as it revealed its form. A tall, armored warrior with glowing blue eyes. His armor shimmered with an ethereal energy, and his presence felt like something out of a forgotten myth. "Who are you?" Kira demanded, rising to her feet, every nerve on alert. She felt an instinctual wave of power surge through her, as if her body was preparing for another confrontation. The figure remained silent for a moment, his gaze piercing as if weighing her very soul. Then, in a voice that seemed to echo in the very air, he spoke. "I am the last of the Guardians, and I have come to offer you a choice." Kira's breath caught in her throat. "A choice? What do you mean?" The Guardian's blue eyes narrowed. "The Voidwalkers are not the only ones who seek the power hidden in this base. There are others who have waited millennia for this moment. They would see the universe destroyed, broken into pieces so they may remake it in their image." He stepped forward, his voice growing more intense. "The Guardians, we were not just protectors of peace, we were keepers of balance. And you, Princess Kira, you have inherited that responsibility. You are not just the heir to a fallen kingdom. You are the inheritor of the Guardian's will." Eli took a step forward, disbelief in his eyes. "What? But Kira she's just a princess. She's not." The Guardian raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to shift, the energy of the room responding to his presence. "She is not just anything. The Guardians chose her just as they chose me. She was born to awaken the power and stop the coming storm." Kira's mind was racing. She had always thought her destiny was tied to her people, to the throne she had lost. But now, standing before this Guardian, she realized that her role in this battle was far greater than she had ever imagined. She was no longer just Kira, the princess of a forgotten kingdom. She was something more, something they had never told her. "I don't understand," Kira admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you want me to do?" The Guardian stepped closer, lowering his hood to reveal a face that, though human, seemed almost otherworldly. His features were sharp, his skin pale as if he had not seen the light of day for eons. His eyes, glowing with a soft blue fire, locked onto hers with an intensity that almost felt like he could see straight into her soul. "The Voidwalkers are not merely a threat to this world. They are a threat to the entire galaxy, and the power you possess is the only weapon that can stop them. But it is not enough to simply defeat them in battle. You must understand what they are and why they are after you. Only then will you be able to stop them." Kira's pulse quickened. "And how am I supposed to do that?" The Guardian's eyes softened slightly, though there was still an air of urgency. "The key to defeating them lies in the memories of the Guardians, memories that are sealed deep within the base. But you must access them before the Voidwalkers can. Time is running out." Kira swallowed hard, her mind swimming with the weight of his words. The memories of the Guardians. She had sensed something in the walls of the base, something ancient, something powerful. But she had never known that the key to saving the galaxy and herself was hidden within those memories. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Kira whispered, feeling the full weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. The Guardian nodded, his expression grave. "You were never meant to be ready, you were meant to awaken, and now the time has come." The air in the room shifted once more, a pulse of energy radiating from the Guardian's armor. Kira could feel the power and the knowledge begin to pour into her. The connection to the Guardians was growing stronger, but so too was the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. "We must move quickly," the Guardian urged. "The Voidwalkers will not wait for you to prepare." Kira took a deep breath, her hands clenched into fists. There was no turning back now. With one final glance at Eli, who stood frozen in awe, Kira stepped forward. Her journey had only just begun, and the fate of the galaxy rested on her shoulders.